The story begins with Elijah Reynolds, a 39-year-old FBI special agent, facing a life-threatening situation. Five police officers have their guns drawn and aimed at him on his own front lawn. His head is bleeding from where one of the officers, Brennan, hit him. The officers are unaware that Elijah is an FBI agent. Inside his home, officers continued their destructive, illegal search. They entered Elijah's home office, where his FBI commendations, awards, and case files were on display. Sergeant Conrad emerged, holding a framed FBI commendation, called it a nice forgery, and then deliberately dropped it on the porch, shattering the glass. Elijah calmly warned him that he was damaging federal property and interfering with an active federal investigation. Conrad laughed it off, saying, "Your fake ID doesn't impress me." Inside, officers mocked Elijah, taking pictures of his FBI documents and a photo of him with the director, calling it a good enough costume. After 45 minutes, Conrad finally instructed Officer Miller to make a verification call, but instead of calling the FBI field office, he called a desk sergeant at their own precinct, a deliberate delay tactic. Blood from Elijah's head wound had now dried, staining his shirt. From across the street, Jenkins was joined by other neighbors, all watching with satisfaction. Officer Williams emerged from the house with Elijah's laptop and hard drives, claiming they were probably full of stolen financial data. Elijah insisted they contained classified federal information and that removing them was a federal offense. The officers, unaware that their body cameras and Elijah's hidden security system were recording everything, continued to pile up violations. One of Elijah's hidden cameras even captured a hushed conversation between Brannon and Williams about planting evidence if they couldn't find anything incriminating. Elijah subtly unnerved the officers by referencing specific departmental policies, such as the requirement for a supervisor to file a report after a forced warrantless entry. He also activated an emergency distress signal on his tactical watch, alerting the FBI security team that an agent was in trouble. Shortly after, Assistant Chief Robert Wilson arrived, immediately siding with Conrad and ordering the search to continue. The violations continued to accumulate, and the officers, unaware of Elijah's distress signal, were being held accountable by the evidence they were creating. Then Conrad's phone rang with a Washington, D.C. number. The voice on the other end identified himself as FBI Director Patrick Morgan, who demanded to know why one of his agents was being detained and physically injured without cause. He informed Conrad that the entire encounter was being recorded and that Elijah was the leader of the Civil Rights Division's Special Task Force on Police Misconduct. Conrad's face paled as the implications became clear, and he ordered Brannon to immediately remove Elijah's handcuffs. With the cuffs removed, Elijah remained perfectly composed, rubbing his wrists while maintaining eye contact with Assistant Chief Wilson. He calmly thanked the director for the call and promised to provide a full report within the hour. As the officer stepped aside, Elijah walked deliberately into his house, where he found his belongings scattered and his furniture overturned. He turned to face the officers who had followed him inside, his demeanor shifting from compliant suspect to commanding federal authority. He informed them that their body cameras contained evidence for an active federal investigation and warned them that any attempt to tamper with it would be considered obstruction of justice. Several officers instinctively reached for their cameras before stopping themselves. Outside, Elijah's exterior cameras recorded Wilson and Conrad discussing how to contain the situation and get the body cameras offline before the footage uploaded to the server. Elijah then retrieved a secure phone from a hidden compartment in his home office that the officers had missed. He sent a coded message to Agent Maya Chen, initiating a predetermined FBI response protocol. Returning to the main room, he addressed the officers again, telling them that the night's events had been monitored under FBI Operation Code 5628, an investigation into systematic civil rights violations by police enforcement in the jurisdiction.
Elijah revealed that the initial call had come from retired Chief Jenkins, who was already under federal surveillance for orchestrating false reports. Just then, Agent Chan and 4 tactical team members entered the house. Chan announced that by order of the Department of Justice, the residence was now a federal crime scene. Wilson and Conrad were intercepted by FBI technicians as they attempted to tamper with the patrol car's digital video recorders. Neighbors who had gathered to watch Elijah's humiliation quickly dispersed as FBI vehicles swarmed the street. Jenkins and Sullivan were stopped and questioned. Elijah contacted Assistant Director Lawrence Thompson on a secure satellite phone, calmly reporting that the operation had gone exactly as anticipated. His composure and precise language stunned the listening officers as it became clear that his presence in the neighborhood had never been a coincidence. It was a carefully orchestrated sting operation. For the next 24 hours, Elijah's home became the epicenter of a massive federal corruption investigation. As Elijah, now clearly in command, directed operations from his office, specialized interrogation experts began questioning the officers. Meanwhile, FBI digital forensics experts accessed the officers' text message groups, discovering a dedicated group called Neighborhood Integrity, where they coordinated enforcement actions to deliberately target minority residents. The messages revealed explicit racial language and detailed strategies for displacement. As the investigation expanded, FBI analysts uncovered disturbing statistical patterns, revealing that enforcement actions in Westlake Estates were 840% higher for minority residents. They also found evidence that Assistant Chief Wilson was attempting to remotely delete records from police servers, but cyber specialists captured every deletion attempt. The investigation took a financial turn when Elijah's team found unusual payment patterns between the police department's asset forfeiture fund and several city officials. They discovered a systematic diversion of seized assets through shell companies connected to Wilson and Conrad, with smaller payments going to officers involved in the targeted enforcement. This financial trail led to a stunning discovery. Police activity increased dramatically in neighborhoods where minority home ownership rose above 15%. And within 6 months, properties were often sold at a loss by minority owners and then purchased by corporate entities connected to Walter Sullivan and his development companies. The investigation also uncovered that Gerald Jenkins' private security company was responsible for unauthorized surveillance equipment found in Elijah's home, confirming that he had been monitoring Elijah from day one. A secured folder on Conrad's laptop contained a document titled Property Value Protection Protocols, which provided explicit instructions for targeting minority homeowners. When District Attorney Michael Hamilton arrived at Elijah's home demanding jurisdiction over the case, Elijah calmly revealed that his name appeared in the financial records with connections to dismissed civil rights cases, creating a clear conflict of interest. Hamilton quickly backed down. The opposition's countermeasures began to escalate, starting with anonymous threats directed at the neighbors who had provided witness statements supporting Elijah. Local media outlets, which had financial ties to the conspirators, began running coordinated segments questioning the FBI's jurisdiction. Mayor Gregory Williams held a press conference to condemn the federal overreach while attempting to file emergency motions to restrict the FBI's access to department records. What he didn't mention was that he also had irregular payments from the police forfeiture fund. Elijah's property was vandalized with racist graffiti, but the evidence technicians who documented the hate crime were able to collect DNA samples. The conspirators also attempted to plant false evidence in Elijah's FBI personnel file and had his security clearance temporarily suspended. FBI vehicles parked near the command center were vandalized and agents were followed. But the most concerning escalation was when Agent Chen received threatening calls to her parents' home in San Francisco, with the caller having access to restricted personal information. The widespread corruption was now extending to intimidation and targeted harassment. The corruption network launched its most elaborate attack yet by planting a false news story that accused Elijah of evidence tampering in his previous cases. However, forensic analysis of the department's internal messaging system revealed that the entire smear campaign had been fabricated. This confirmed that the conspiracy extended to using the media to undermine the investigation. The financial investigation also uncovered that 5 development companies connected to Sullivan and Jenkins had purchased 28 properties from minority homeowners after intensive police harassment, with each property then resold to a white buyer at a significant profit. Jenkins was captured on surveillance footage holding a community meeting and openly admitting to his discriminatory intent, framing it as a way to protect property values. The conspiracy took a dangerous turn when Elijah's security system detected 3 armed individuals attempting to access his property at 2:15 a.m. Interrogation of these individuals revealed connections to Jenkins' private security company, suggesting a hired attempt to assassinate Elijah disguised as a home invasion. Evidence tampering at police headquarters was also discovered, but the FBI had already secured server backups. The investigation expanded, revealing that the scheme had been in operation for 2 decades in 7 other neighborhoods, resulting in over $30 million in profits. Sullivan's role was also expanded when it was discovered that he had maintained connections to extremist groups while presenting himself as an innocent HOA president. Elijah continued to work from a secure FBI facility as the investigation expanded, with his team recovering communication between Conrad, Wilson, and Jenkins dating back 7 years. These communications detailed explicit racial motivations behind enforcement patterns and a systematic targeting of minority homeowners. They also found a pattern of civil asset forfeitures where properties were seized from homeowners who couldn't pay, accumulating fines, only to be purchased at auction by companies connected to Sullivan and Jenkins. The investigation provided irrefutable evidence of a criminal conspiracy when Elijah's security system captured Wilson and Jenkins on his property, planting items to create a pretext for the raid. Junior officers, seeing the overwhelming evidence, began to cooperate with the FBI. Jenkins' private security company was found to have been receiving monthly payments from Sullivan's development group, essentially creating a business model out of institutional racism. A second assassination attempt on Elijah was narrowly avoided when his FBI security detail discovered tampering with his car's brake lines and steering components. The final crucial evidence was found in Assistant Chief Wilson's offshore accounts, which contained over $11 million with transaction patterns that aligned perfectly with the property turnovers in targeted neighborhoods. With the evidence chain complete and unbreakable, FBI Director Morgan authorized the final phase of Operation Clean Sweep. Elijah presented the final operational plan, showing his team a complex organizational chart of the criminal enterprise. The plan was to simultaneously apprehend all 47 conspirators across multiple jurisdictions at 4 a.m. At the appointed time, 27 FBI teams executed warrants. Elijah personally led the team that arrested Assistant Chief Wilson at his mansion. Across town, Officer Brennan in his patrol locker room and dozens of other conspirators, including Jenkins, Sullivan, Hamilton, and Mayor Williams, were all simultaneously arrested. The coordinated arrest and the prominence of the arrestees generated immediate national media attention. During the arraignments, the overwhelming evidence, including financial records, communication logs, and video footage, was presented to the court. Brennan, facing the most serious charges, broke down and claimed he was just following orders, unintentionally confirming the discriminatory policies. During a press conference, FBI Director Morgan revealed that Operation Clean Sweep had begun 14 months earlier after statistical analysis identified unusual enforcement patterns. He explained that Elijah had volunteered for the dangerous assignment of placing himself in the target environment to trigger and document the conspiracy's operations. This transformed public perception of Elijah from a victim to a dedicated agent. In the wake of the arrest, the Atlanta Police Department was fundamentally restructured under a federal consent decree, ensuring equal protection for all citizens. The systematic abuses were now documented, and property records in the Westlake Estates neighborhood began showing increasing diversity as the artificial barriers fell. Despite the trauma he endured, Elijah decided to stay in his home. He explained that leaving would mean the conspirators had partially succeeded. His presence now symbolized the rule of law overcoming corruption and discrimination. The community began a healing process, with neighbors organizing a diversity committee. Elijah was promoted to lead the FBI's new National Task Force on Systematic Discrimination. He hosted a neighborhood cookout on his lawn where he had once been humiliated, celebrating the transformation of his community. The new cameras on his property now captured children of all backgrounds playing together, and neighbors engaged in respectful conversation. The story concludes with Elijah watching the transformed neighborhood, a quiet victory in the much larger struggle for equal justice that remained his life's work.